So yeah, what I was thinking was that we could kind of use this so that way we can keep making forward progress. And essentially, if we facilitate the questions, same way we might be on the call, and then everyone does their video response, we keep moving forward from there.
Great idea, Caleb.
Yeah, that could work. I'm down. I concur. Great job. All right, so I'm going to end the one that we're currently on StreamYard, and then we could go ahead and do the work separately, and when everybody's ready, let everybody else know, I guess, on here, and then we'll start the rundown.
Do you guys want to just put the Brene Brown as a priority and just take the next 45 minutes, read that, and then hop back on here at around 3:15 and do the questions for this, and then we can wait and do the movie intermittently before Wednesday?
I am currently working on the movie right now and reading the story. So I believe this is a great idea. Like Caleb said, to continue moving forward.
I'm not sure if you realized you put like a slow masculine voice filter on there.
I actually didn't. I don't know how to truly work this, but all I know is I hit with start recording, then I'm here. So just to make sure I understand this correctly, this is where we will come back, answer the questions from our homework on here, and when everyone completes the assignment, this is where they will drop their responses. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so. I guess I was just going to give myself some time frame of dedicating some time for me to read the Brene Brown and come back around 3:15 to give my answers for the Brene Brown part, and then the Inside Out movie. I wanted to make sure you had enough time, TJ had enough time to finish it, and then I don't know if we want to set a deadline for that as well. I mean, how are you guys feeling about the time frame? Do you want it to kind of just be loosey, with the time, or do we want to set some deadlines for ourselves?
I can sense as a group, it's hard to truly set a time frame with everyone's schedule. So I would say just keep it up in the air. We're going to play it by ear while everyone completes. And as I'm completing this now, I will let everyone know on here that I'm complete. I have completed the homework, and we can move on with the other individuals inside the group.
Okay, sounds good. I'll just keep to my own, just so I can keep myself moving, and then because I reserved this time to do this now, and then we'll, for like Shaquila and Clarence or whoever else isn't in on this. That's a good point. I forgot that they're they don't even know what we planned yet.
Okay, I'm good with that. And the questions for the homework is inside of the email. Is that correct?
Yeah, the questions are in the email that's they had the link for the chapter that's titled Action Needed, Essential Friend Group, October Meetings, Reachers. And that has the breakdown of the Brene Brown assignment, and then it also has the breakdown of the Inside Out questions as well. So those will all be found there. So I guess whenever you want to give your response, maybe we just kind of just make sure that we're prefacing of which section that we're responding about.
Awesome. Thank you, Ruby. I'm going to go ahead and watch the movies and read the story, and I will jump right back on to give my response unless we want to hold off on the response. If not, I'm just going to go ahead and put it in, and everyone else can follow suit. Or you can go ahead and do yours first, Ruby, if you completed yours. And if anyone else completed theirs, they can go ahead and submit their response, and everyone else can follow suit as well. Jason, quick question, Jason. Are we still on live on YouTube right now? Or that life has ended.
So I'm just going to start out with the, I guess I reread the instructions a little bit more after reading the chapter, and I feel like it made a little more sense to me after, to kind of divide and conquer and break things up. So I'm just going to start volunteering myself just to start with the first section of the stress and overwhelm part, and then the questions. Okay, so we kind of already went through everything. Okay, so all right, so, sorry. Thank you for your understanding. All right, so in what ways will fear interfere with your ability to think clearly? So I guess I'm just going to start with question 1. I don't want to go through everything. But yeah, I like how it really broke it down and talked about how periods of time to do nothing and to have fun and to play. I had a chart a long time ago with some different things that I've been thinking about lately, and overwhelm is something that I do feel quite frequently, and going for a walk was a suggestion. It had like 3 or 4 suggestions, and so I really like that. But I know from personal experience, when fear or for me, it can interfere with your ability to think clearly. I think because we make decisions based on the story, and the fear of the potential of the future, as opposed to, allowing ourselves some time to calm down and play or distance ourselves from the situation and then kind of come back to it. So I'm just going to start with question 1. So in what ways will fear interfere with your ability to think clearly? I think it can muddle your perspective and can get you to make decisions because you don't know exactly. Like for me, I've been diving into the perception of, is this a real fear, or is this like post-traumatic stress syndrome fear, to where like you're experiencing a fear but there is no inherent danger, but it is real because you've experienced something similar before. So I think it can just put you in a loop of making decisions from a place of not having all the information.
So I don't want to take up too much of everybody's time, but here's a quick look at my questions and answers for both sets. I'll also send a picture to, you know what, I will just send a picture of both of my papers to the text group so you guys know what my answers were. You guys have a great Sunday.
Hey guys, yeah, Ruby, I agree. Fear does take you for a loop. So for me, in what ways will fear interfere with your ability to think clearly? As we know, fear is false evidence appearing real, creating a sense of perceived threat that may not ever take place, that may not ever happen, causing me to freeze, run, flee. So I definitely agree with you, Ruby, about the loop. And when I think of my adverse childhood experiences, and the ones that I'm still healing today, I think that initially in the situation I froze, and then as soon as I had the opportunity to run, I ran like miles away to my grandmother's house. So yes, that's my response.
Hey y'all, so just to go ahead and get this knocked out, I'm gonna do like I had mentioned in the group text. So I'm gonna actually go through all of my questions and then as we end up kind of all responding and recording, we can make responses to somebody else's video, and then I can just reorder it.
What's good, Yellow Team? Peace and blessings, all. So I guess my answer to that question is fear basically impacts the way or the ability to actually respond to things, right? There's no air hitting the brain, and so fear sends you into like this primal state. And I just finished this training, and the brother was speaking to the basically the two fundamental primal emotions being fear and love. And when an individual is afraid, basically dealing in that fear realm, right, you want to do three things: control, suppress, and change, right? And so naturally, whenever something happens and the amygdala is hijacked, basically, right, that fear response or that fear system, you only want to be safe, right? So that usually means for us, right, especially the ACE babies, reverting to the things we either know or the things that make us comfortable because that's what we know. And so basically when we're afraid, we do anything to survive and basically calm ourselves, because the brain is basically this primal animal that literally jumps into its threat response anytime something happens. Like there's a stimuli, an external stimuli that pretty much puts us in that same arrested developmental state, like that basic trigger piece, right? That activated mindset. And when we're activated, we only do what's necessary to survive, which is that comfort zone living. So we're going to do whatever it takes to make us not afraid, right? And 9 times out of 10, that's a maladaptive or an arrested coping strategy, which usually looks like avoidance, which usually looks like defensiveness, anything that we can typically do to basically reset our homeostasis place, right? Anything that put us back in a balance. And so I truly believe that in a place of fear, right, we do what we have to, not what we want to or what we need to do, but we do what we have to do to feel safe and secure.
So for the first part, for Brene Brown, the first question is, in what ways will fear interfere with your ability to think clearly? And in the reading, it said that fear is a rapid fire emotion, and that, the typical responses to that is fight, flight, or freeze. And for myself, I think about the fact that those stress responses are something I'm very much familiar with. I think most often, depending on the situation, I'm probably going to be in actually any of them. It really depends on the situation, but I think going a little deeper, one of the ways that fear, and I love what Shaquila said about false evidence appearing real, interferes with your ability to think clearly, is in the moment that fear ends up seizing your mind, what you end up now responding to is the perceived danger or threat as being larger. It's like, you remember when you're looking at your mirror and it says objects may appear closer than they seem, kind of a thing. I think it's the same thing with fear, where when we look at situations, that whatever that threat is, it's like right upon us. And now it's like we go into a primal state of reaction when, if we actually could take an opportunity to pause and identify what's actually here, like how much of this is actually real, that I think that probably would be kind of how I would answer that. We go into stress responses. That's how fear interferes with our ability to think clearly. And I think that actually taking an opportunity to understand what that perceived threat is probably, I guess, the actionable steps. It's not actually part of the question, but I kept going. For Brene Brown, question number 2, what are some of the places you go when you feel stress, overwhelm, anxiety, vulnerability, or worry? Definitely, I'm going to say I go within myself. I know that at the end, there was the chart about places we go when All of those actually fall under when things are uncertain and too much, and I definitely agree with that. I think that something else that I might bring up is when we say some of the places that you go when you feel those things, I kind of think about the voices that arise inside your head. And one of those definitely would be kind of like that imposter syndrome, the you're not good enough voice, or the desire to, we're looking at these stress, overwhelm, anxiety, vulnerability, worry. I think a lot of those probably would bring up that flight response that we were talking about, because it's a matter of like, okay, I'm not comfortable in this space, but I would rather be comfortable. So let me go to a space that is not causing me to feel this way. For Brene Brown, question 3, in what ways could this chapter help vulnerable populations understand the importance of ACEs on emotions? I thought about the fact that this chapter really helps us be able to define and understand the effects of how those emotions end up impacting the body and the mind. And by not even understanding them, but it goes further into kind of giving you like, okay, well, this is how you feel and it's okay to feel that way. But now that you've identified it, you can do something with it. So the fact that we would have the ability to understand that these emotions are identifiable. And once you can identify it, now you can do something about it. And for people who their ACEs are impacting them, this education would be a very beneficial way for them to understand that they're not the only person experiencing these kinds of emotions, and that there are things that they can do to either, I would say, work with these emotions or even reduce their effects. All right, team. So if anything, what I would say is the same way I kind of went through this. If possible, go ahead and go through the rest of your answers. I know that we're kind of waiting on everybody to get through it, but at this point, to make certain that we at least get it done before Wednesday, I would just recommend that everybody goes ahead, records their segment. And then if you want to reply to anybody's questions, go ahead and kind of shout them out. So, and a good example for me would be CK. I really, really loved your answer for the way fear interferes with our ability to think clearly. I completely agree with you when you're talking about that part about when fear kicks in, what it is that we want and how we respond in accordance to that. Because that is so, so true. And I guess I never really heard it put that way, but I vibe with it. So thank you for that. And in the same way, I just responded to that. I would say that as we go through this, if anybody says anything that really resonates with you, you got to give them those snaps. Go ahead and respond in that way. And we'll just kind of keep it moving that way. We can always link it where it kind of, each person's question number 1 answers follow each other, because I can save the downloads and move them around if need be. But I think that this probably would be the best way for us to make certain that everybody gets their voice heard for this session. Thank you.
Peace, family, and thanks again, Caleb, for modeling that, right? Thanks for taking the reins, young leader, you. And also, right, thanks to everybody else contributing, right? Because, this is where it's at, and this is what we do. So I kind of answered question 1 in the sense of like, obviously, in addition to Brene Brown's, right, primal responses to fear, right, that flight, or freeze thing, I definitely think that I'm going to stand firm on that, right, in a sense of like understanding those 2 primal emotions of fear and love, right, and how they kind of motivate or influence our actions and our perceptions on where we fit in the world and what the world really is and how it sees us or how the people in it see us, right? Pregunta número 2. Some of the places that I go to immediately, kind of to piggyback on what Caleb was saying, right, is automatically internally. And I think that, right, out of the three brain systems or the three intuitions, right, that we mainly have, right, being the psychological, the emotional, right, and then the kind of like the digestive piece, right, and the physiological, I think that we automatically retreat into our safe place, kind of like what Caleb is saying in that comfort zone piece, right? We automatically need to regulate. And unfortunately, like most of us ace babies, we've been doing it trial by fire and kind of in real time. And so we're basically testing before the prep, right? And so we learn these self-soothing texts based on what we see and what feels easiest to us, right? And sometimes, unfortunately, that comes through substance use, that comes through all of these maladaptive situations. But externally, my favorite place to retreat to is nature, right? I have to go see and be humbled by things that are greater than my understanding and greater than my person, right? So retreating to, as they say, God's cathedral, right, is more of a humbling experience that helps me put things back into perspective and jump back inside a body, right? From brain to actual body, right? Instead of the cognitive piece, I'm digging into the emotional piece, but I can only do that when I remove myself from whatever stimulus that is actually putting me in that mode, and then refreshing perspective. I believe that this chapter helps vulnerable populations understand the effect of ACEs on emotions by basically assisting people and giving a model to assisting people putting everyday struggles into the context for greater understanding, right? Because until we acknowledge that there's something in the room, right, we never pay attention to it. And if we never pay attention to it, we can't accept it as a part of our reality. Ergo, right, it sends us into that confusion state of uncertainty, right, which is nothing more than fear and being overwhelmed. So I think that by informing, right, and actually putting these things into context, it allows us to kind of see where our needs are and where they failed to be met in our youth and at any point in time during life. So it's basically an opportunity, right, kind of like the Dr. Seuss version of basically what's happening inside of you, why it's happening inside of you, and how that affects the way we move, and it affects the things outside of us as well. Question number 1 for the inside out piece. I think the most important message or lesson that was taught in Inside Out is that all of us have multiple feelings, and they're not bad nor good. They're just indicators, right? They all speak to the energy of the experiences that we've undergone and the energy that is being held based on those things. So by actually putting it in like this cartoonish way, right, it became less threatening, right? And so when people are less threatened, right, when that fear is out, here comes that second primal emotion of love, right? And then I can actually respond to the stimulus that is happening in my external locus of control. Pregunta número 2 for the inside out piece. I think it taps into the Brene Brown thing, right? Like, most vulnerable populations have exposure to these movies, right? Everybody has exposure to these movies. Does everybody have exposure to the insight on ACEs? Yes, but sometimes not as accessibly as it should be, right? Most of these things are hidden in coded words or in clinical terminology, right? Which just continues to add to the distress internally, the cognitive dissonance, and the barriers to actually leading a fulfilling quality of life. Hey, I know that I be skimming through some shit and I be doing it quickly, but I definitely paid homage to everybody. But correct me if I'm wrong, we still linking up on Wednesday, or are we reverting back to this platform? Help a brother out. Which character do I resonate with most on Inside Out? No cap, I think at this point I am kind of like the afterjoy, but prior to, I operated solely from anger's perspective, right? anything that was not what I created was an initial threat. And it had to be immediately rectified, or it was perceived as some kind of attack. And so, based on my ACE history, right, it turned into a defensive stand, right? And here come all the defense mechanisms and maladaptive communication. Just like anger does in the thing, he's nothing but reactive, right? 0 to 100 real quick. And that was definitely me based on the environment, right? Instead of understanding self. And now where I'm at with the after joy piece, how she starts to kind of gain insight through the experience, right? With the Snuffleupagus thing, and they're trying to shoot up to the deal to save Riley's emotions and all the little memory lands and stuff like that. She understood that everything had a purpose and it was all for good measure. She understood that there is appropriate time for sadness and to grieve, right? She understood that there was a secret power and a purpose for anger, and it all has a place. She understood the same thing. I mean, I guess envy has a purpose, right? If it's going to serve as motivation. But in most cases, right, like, I think that they did a beautiful job, especially toward the end when things started falling apart, on highlighting the importance of each one of these indicators, right? And what need that they were trying to get met, and what the issue was that was being communicated, instead of it turning or manifesting itself in a physical discharge or some kind of impulsivity, right? We have to understand that they are basically just trying to tell us something. They're indicators, right? And not threats, right? And unfortunately for most of us, we've learned how to deal in two major behaviors associated with those feelings. And that's usually anger or depression, which is cool, but there's feelings and there's a whole bunch of other indicators that basically explain the purpose of those things. And we don't always have to get to the bottom of that, like the last resort, if we're more informed in our decision making, right? If we have options, then we're less apt to feel like it's all or nothing, right? The catastrophized thinking of the fear response. So yeah, that's me.
Hey, I just got to watch Caleb and Clarence's stuff. I was definitely I should have been taking notes. But yeah, so I guess answer to your question, we decided to do this format because not everybody was available on Sunday to satisfy our yellow team. So we are still meeting tomorrow as a collective group, I think in the 18 of us or something, through Zoom. So yes, to answer your question really quick about that, so you can put that on your schedule, because I know you're real busy. I make the time to carve that out for that. So yeah, I'm just going to answer that real quick. And I definitely, I guess for future reference for myself, need to remind myself to take some notes while everybody's talking. And I didn't really feel like I expected anybody to per se like have to respond to each person's thing. But like Caleb had said, if like it resonated with you and you wanted to kind of like do a little shout out or whatnot, specifically to kind of tag team a topic, which could inspire the other thing too. So I guess ultimately, we're kind of, I feel like this is like a trial thing, trying to figure out how this is work. Can we do this in a collective way? I think with the time differences, and you talked a little bit about accessibility, that this could be a cool platform for our small group stuff, or just to kind of even keep in touch, throughout the month, and whatnot. So, hey everybody, especially Caleb, I definitely got your text about needing to finish this, so be prepared. It will be coming. I will find some time to get it done before we have to mentally switch gears to our next topic in our next group. So, okay, I'm back. I'm going to try to get through these and recall what we said. So, in your own words, what was the movie trying to teach the audience about emotions? I think it was trying to teach people about emotions is that sometimes different emotions are running the show, and circumstances influence that, and to be aware that we can't be joyful all the time. The other emotions have their place. And I like how they, kind of highlighted the strengths of each emotion. Okay, in what ways could this film help vulnerable populations understand the importance of ACEs? Well, I think it's very accessible as a cartoon. Kids, people with disabilities, unique abilities, different populations can watch as a family, and it was relatable. I think it had enough story and content that adults would enjoy watching it with their kids. So in that way, I think that's helpful. Maybe could be a time to be a little reflective, hopefully, about how the circumstances influence that, the different emotions.